I'm Linda Elsiegood, founder of the LDN Research Trust. It has been my honour to interview LDN researchers, prescribers, pharmacists and patients from around the world for many conditions. Thank you for joining us.
This evening I'm joined by Deena from the United States, who takes LDN for depression, anxiety, Hashimoto's, and it's also helped with a chronic dry eye. Thank you for joining us, Deena.
Thank you.
Could you tell us when you first noticed that there was something wrong with you?
Well, there's a number of conditions here. I've had the chronic dry eye since at least my teens. Depression on and off since my teens as well, with some mood swings, but nothing really major until probably my mid-20s. And then I had another very, very severe depression attack about 3 years ago. So that would have been around 2013 or so. Let's see, what else? The Hashimoto's, I think I first was diagnosed around 1999. So I guess it's kind of hard to. My depression, I suppose, was adolescent based, maybe.
Before you started LDN, could you explain to us what your symptoms were like at that time?
Sure. Just prior to it, I was in the throes of a very severe major depression that kind of came out of nowhere, or at least it wasn't related to any life events. My life had been just fine prior to that. I did have a bout of a bunch of inflammatory diseases. I had diverticulitis, some kind of problem with my pancreas that caused insufficient pancreatic enzymes. I had GERD and other related inflammation in my gut. My depression was so severe that I had absolutely no joy in life whatsoever. I was just purely kind of going through the motions of daily life and just trying to keep afloat, tell you the truth. And a lot of suicidal ideation. And I started seeing a psychiatrist who, lucky for me, was very holistically oriented and knew about LDN, and he suggested it. And after a lot of failures with all the standard antidepressants, I agreed to try it. And within a very short period of time, like 2 or 3 days, I woke up one morning and knew instantly that life had completely changed.
Wow.
Prior to that, every morning when I woke up, my first immediate thought was, oh no, I'm still here, and I have to get through it, and I have to get through another day. And that day I woke up, and within seconds, I just knew that I was okay, and I started doing things again. I started gardening again, and participating in sports, which I was kind of still doing, but only because I knew exercise was important. It wasn't because I was enjoying anything. And the same activities that I had been doing throughout my depression just to kind of keep busy, like yoga and Tai Chi and classes that I take, I'm retired, became joyful again. They weren't during the depression, which was at least 6 months long. And this has been, it was May. I remember the day. It was May 20th was when I woke up kind of cured, and that was of last year. So it's been, 15, 16 months now. And during that time, I really haven't had a single bad day or even a single bad hour. Occasionally I go through what everybody goes through of, setbacks of, not setbacks, but, a trying day for one reason or another. But my feelings during that are just very different than my feelings would have been during the depression. I mean, I don't get that hopelessness. I can't deal with this. I can't, it's just I do what I have to do and go on, and it doesn't impact my ability to enjoy the day anyway. And I did have a couple of, not major things, but I got a diagnosis of precancerous breast tissue, which is not a horrific event, but at the time I thought my risk was much higher than it was for getting cancer. I thought it was as high as 85% or 65% rather, and that again did not impact my ability to enjoy my life. I just kind of went around feeling, well, if it happens, it happens. I'll deal with it, and meantime I'm going to have fun. So it was for for anyone who knows me and knew me before, that's kind of a remarkable change. I should mention that about a year before I started LDN, I had a similar diverticulitis attack followed by a severe depression that kind of remitted on its own. So, I can't be 100% sure that the LDN was responsible. I also was taking 50 milligrams of Zoloft at the same time as the LDN, but it didn't seem to be doing anything. So, and the fact that I haven't had my usual, the depression that I had before I took LDN, it sort of lifted, but not completely. I still had mood swings and so forth. So it does seem different this time. It seems more pronounced, more steady.
And the fact you've not had any sort of further episodes.
Right. And I'm getting off Zoloft. It doesn't seem to make a difference. Also, my chronic dry eye has gotten extremely better, and I am on Restasis and Azicite, which is another eye drop, which might be the cause of that, but my eye doctors were kind of surprised that I responded as quickly as I did to those things. It was only, I think, 2 weeks when the Restasis seemed to make a huge difference or measurable difference. And that also happened to be like a week or so after I started LDN. My Hashimoto's thyroid antibodies have been going steadily down pretty much. They did start to go down prior to the LDN, possibly from some dietary changes, but they went down way more sharply after the LDN. And my other numbers, my free T3, reverse T3, and the ratio between those two is normal for the first time about 3 months ago when I was tested. So, possibly that's been impacted as well.
And what about the anxiety?
I was just going to mention that I was, at the time that I started the LDN, I had been on 1.5 milligrams of Klonopin for about a year maybe, I'm not sure. And that had pretty much eliminated my anxiety. Did have to increase the dose over time to continue that. Before that, my anxiety was unreal. It's the only thing I can say. I mean, I had depressions, much more mild, moderate depressions throughout my adult life, with occasional anxiety and so forth. But this was like something I'd never experienced before. I would be up most of the night, actually, and I used to be a very sound sleeper, with incredibly intense anxiety that felt to me like the way I hear veterans explaining PTSD. I once had a very stressful job working in child abuse as a social worker, and I was having like flashbacks to that. I mean, this was a long time ago. It was almost 40-some years ago, but I was feeling like I was going through it again. I would wake up thinking about some of my cases and feeling the same kind of stress and heartbreak and pain that I felt for my clients back then. I was like experiencing all over again. It was very strange, and no reason for it. It wasn't like I had something had happened to trigger it that I knew of. And just in general, my anxiety was just through the roof. I think I had some cortisol tests around that time that weren't very good either. But anyway, the Klonopin completely wiped out the anxiety, but didn't really touch the depression, strangely. But when I started the LDN, I'd say within a month or so of being on LDN, my doctor started weaning me off the Klonopin, a 0.5 milligram at a time, and that was very easy to do. I had absolutely no withdrawal symptoms. I didn't miss it at all. It was a whole lot easier to get off than I thought it would be. So, I'm guessing that the LDN took the place of it.
What a remarkable story that is. I mean, depression is a terrible thing to have to live with, isn't it? Like living in a cloud, I guess. Yeah.
Even worse than that. I've had depressions where I would say my affect was blunted and I wasn't enjoying life as much. But this was the first time I had a depression where I actually hated being alive. I hate to say that, but I would have preferred to be dead. I mean, that sounds awful, and I never considered actually active suicide, but only because I didn't want to hurt people. I didn't want things like that. I remember at one point during my depression, I saw a hearse go by to a funeral, and the thought that came to my mind was lucky. I just couldn't believe that I was having that reaction, that I wished I was there in that hearse, and that just blew my mind. Even as a depressed person, I had never ever given up all hope and felt like life was too painful to continue. I mean, that was just, and to go from that to like really loving every day and every minute of every day is like a, pretty remarkable change.
What would you say to other people who were thinking of taking LDN for depression but were rather scared?
Oh my goodness! My only regret about LDN is that it was about I forget how many months after my doctor suggested it that I agreed to take it, because to tell you the truth, he sent me the information from the website. I read it. It sounded like snake oil. It sounded too good to be true. And having had many failures with many standard antidepressants, and I just didn't see how it could possibly be helpful, but the safety information about it, the fact that, and that's what I would say to people, is what do you have to lose? It has a pretty good safety record going back some period of time. It's a very low dose, doesn't seem to interfere with other things. It is not too expensive. I tell everyone I think might benefit from it. Give it a try. And unfortunately, the biggest problem for people is that they can't get their doctors to prescribe it. I mean, it amazes me, that their doctors will prescribe things that we know have side effects and are hard, and don't have a great track record, but they won't try this. So that's kind of the problem. But
we're working on it.
Yeah, and actually that would be my suggestion to people would be, push for it. And I don't know if my experience is common. My doctor tells me no. By common I mean that it happened so quickly that I responded. He said, it can take a few months. And my thought is, if it can happen pretty quickly, then you really have nothing to lose, because if it doesn't work, you stop it, and nothing lost. So, that would be my my advice.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us.
Well, thank you for the work you're doing.
Do you have LDN experience to share? If so, please email me, linda@ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you.